Brian Barnett is just a regular guy. He's not a doctor. He has no legal license in any field of mental health nor emotional health. Brian Barnett merely shares the insights he has gained from his personal experiences for anybody who may choose to use such information as they individually and personally choose, while accepting full responsibility for their own individual thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. Brian Barnett assumes no responsibility whatsoever for anybody's individual choice to expose himself or herself to any information that Brian Barnett shares, and by listening to this program, you are acknowledging that you, and only you, are responsible for your own thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. Happy Thursday, everybody. Welcome back to The Last Symptom. So glad you can make it. I'm Brian Barnett, the creator and host. And if you haven't had a chance, and even if you have, head over to my website, full of free resources at thelastsymptom.com. While you're there, and if you're so inclined, make a donation to support my overall body of work, which includes this podcast. Now, today we have a very special guest. A formerly educated psychologist from India is joining us. She's somebody that I have a lot of admiration for. So, without further ado, let me introduce you to Archana from India. Hi, Archana.
Hi, my ears have actually turned a little red right now after hearing that introduction. Thank you so much.
Well, you know, if I'd had more time this morning, I would have lengthened that out and really built you up.
You built me up enough right now.
So let's get some personal stuff out of the way. You just got married.
Yes, November 2018. 25th November, to be precise.
And how's that going?
Very well, very good. We've just moved to a new place and I'm very excited about a lot of things. And yeah, it's going very well.
Are you still in the honeymoon phase?
We've dated for 3 years. So some of our honeymoon phase was actually covered then. I think we're in the figuring out life phase right now. So.
Gotcha. Well, we're so happy for you. Now, tell us a little bit about, how you come across me, your experience as a psychologist, your schooling in that area, and so on.
Should I go in order or randomly?
Whatever makes you feel best.
Okay. So when I was young, I had anorexia nervosa. I was very ill. I lost a ton of weight. I was really skinny and I went through a very, very hard time. I'll elaborate on that if an opportunity comes up for it. But at that point of time, I think in the 90s is when the internet had just launched and I read a lot of support groups and I learned about anorexia. Nobody in India knew what it was. My parents didn't know what to do. They were trying to force feed me. It was a very bad time. I didn't know what was going on with me. And at that point of time, I just had finished my exams and I was contemplating what to do. I got a pre-medical seat and I wanted to do medicine at that point, but I wasn't having the health to keep up with that. And mental health as a profession really called out to me because, I was suffering so much and nobody was even aware of what was going on. People, some psychiatrists prescribed some medicines which weren't useful and I would spiral down and I had no help. And then there was this community of people I would speak to on the internet, women from different parts of the world who would offer support. And I think they were the main reason why I became better. I thought I completely kicked anorexia because, I started eating healthy, I started working out, I started, thinking differently. And but it was many years later that I discovered that anorexia was actually a stem of a much larger issue, which is BPD. And I had no idea about it because the rest of my life was completely normal. Everything was good. In fact, I'm a total extrovert. I do a lot of, my career is smooth. All of that was good. But my personal relationships were getting affected. And in 2012, I had what you call an arranged marriage in India. And he was a great guy. And, this guy really wanted to marry me. He chased me around for a long time. And and I wasn't sure whether I wanted him, but I wanted his affection. I wanted that attachment. I wanted him to constantly love me the way he did. And I think I said yes just for that reason. I got married and for the wrong reasons. And in 1 year, it all fell apart, crashing around me. And that's when I realized something is drastically wrong with how I relate. And then I started introspecting about all my relationships and I realized something is really wrong with me. And that's when I, took several tests, went to a psychiatrist, figured out maybe I have borderline, and I need further help. And in the process of doing that, I've been, not completely satisfied with everything that the medical community tells me, obviously, since I'm also studied as a psychologist. I always felt there was more. I always felt that this, has gotten a very bad name. And one fine day, I was Googling BPD on Quora, and I hit upon, Brian Barnett, and I read some of your answers. And I remember sharing it with at least 10 people on the same day, including my boyfriend then, and saying, I have discovered a gold mine. And, this gentleman talks exactly what I think, I think about what I think. And yeah, that's how I got introduced to the group. And yeah, that's that.
And the rest is history.
The rest is history, yes.
Well, it's there is a difference, isn't there, between hearing something or studying something third hand and having actually experienced it yourself. There's just no comparison for actually having experienced a thing for yourself and figured it out, right?
Oh my God, yes. It is zero. There's zero connection to what you experience and what you study. In the sense, okay, zero is wrong, 20% maybe. You can probably...
Sure.
Yeah, you can probably know, what a disorder is, stated in the DSM, and they'll tell you the symptoms, and, we learned the symptoms, and we wrote we memorized the symptoms sometimes, and, we write them down, and we understand the treatment and the modalities and all of that, but actually experiencing it, actually knowing, and it's so different, and the funniest part is I'm not sure any psychologist can actually tell you how to cure it. All they can do, and this is, I believe this, and all a therapist, can provide, is being a great listener and encouraging you to probably be intuitive yourself without interfering too much in the process, and just nudging you along a little bit, because, if they tell you do this, do that, this is who you are, and that's completely wrong. So, that's that. So basically, I want to clarify that I did my bachelor's in psychology. I did my master's in human resources. So, I went the other way after that. But from what I have studied and from what I know, I would disagree with the way medication is prescribed. I think psychiatrists, at least I don't know about how it happens in the US, but a lot of psychiatrists in India prescribe medications randomly sometimes without talking about the kind of therapeutic work that has to be done. And I have personally suffered with that. So that's one. Some of the psychologists that I went to, and as I have changed therapists, in the start to understand, and there was one therapist that I found who was really good, and I've stuck to her, for the longest time. But many of the therapists I found were more interested in prescribing things and talking about who you were and making judgmental statements about who you were and stuff. And I didn't quite resonate with that part as well. And I think that could be really devastating to somebody who is, new and learning, because if you have BPD, you tend to believe the worst in yourself anyway. And imagine going to a therapist who is also telling you stuff that's horrible about yourself. That's just double the worst thing that can happen to you.
If you're a layman like I was going into it, you assume that they have the answers. So whatever they say, you just swallow it whole.
Exactly. Yes. Exactly. Mm-hmm.
I guess the lesson here is that trust them with a pinch of skepticism. That they're not gods. They're just normal people. Your health is really your responsibility, not theirs.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a very interesting thing in this regard. I realized when I started going for therapy when I had borderline, initially, like when in 2013, I think, when I started, I was so eager to listen to everything the therapist said about me. And I would go and completely lap up everything and believe every single word, every single psychiatrist said, every single therapist said, and I would assume everything is about me. And I didn't have this self-identity very strongly to, assert and say, think differently or anything of that sort. But I observed other people, who were also taking therapy. I spoke to friends who used to go to therapy, and they were not as rigid as me, in terms of going, completely believing my therapist is God and completely going the whole hog and saying, I'm going to do everything, whatever she says is right. And all of that. From there, I have walked a long way in discovering, this part of my own self who I am, and have my own opinions and thoughts, and I can have discussions, and I can take what she says, but I also have my own side of it, and I listen to myself at the end of the day. So, but to come that far, it took a lot of work, in between, to rely on yourself. So I think I understand when a lot of people with BPD initially rely a lot on other people, because your sense of self is sometimes so shaky at that point. So.
Well, thank you for bringing that up. It's a teeter-totter. It's a balancing act, because on the one hand, recovery involves giving up the idea that you have the answers, because obviously you don't, because up until this point, everything you've done has only brought you heartache and pain. Mm-hmm. On the other hand, you can't just trust anybody either.
Exactly. Yeah.
So when you talk about this slow evolution of coming into yourself and beginning to understand things and being able then mm-hmm. to not just swallow a hook whole, but to say, let me look at this for a minute based on what I've learned up to now.
Yep.
And, is it something that I find to be true and reliable or not? You're right. That is a growth thing. You got to grow into that.
Yeah. And there was I think I had an epiphany around this when I think a friend, or I don't know if it was my therapist at that point, I don't know the person, but they, asked me this question about my self-doubt. And they said that you are running this entire division for this company. I was running learning and development for Bosch at that point. And they said, you're running this entire division for this company. You take decisions all the time, and people listen to you and rely on you, and you're very confident about that. Why are you so scared to take decisions for yourself? It's the same person. It's the same you. If you can take decisions for an entire organization, how is it that you are so confused about yourself and you want to rely on somebody else? And they said something even more. They said everybody is confused, and you just need to own up to your confusion, probably. And it's said in a way, I'm not using the exact words, but that, gave me some sort of an epiphany at that point. And I started thinking, probably I had this black and white understanding of how sure people are as adults, because I thought I should always be sure of everything. And, if I'm sure or I'm not sure at all, and there is no in between. But then, I spent a lot of time observing other people who are adults and how they look at life. And I said, oh my God, everybody is as confused, and maybe being confused is a part of being an adult. It's natural. So I think I had to reparent myself in a lot of ways over the years. I also was confused with what is happiness. When a few years back, I used to confuse boredom sometimes for not being happy. And I think I always wanted that additional excitement for happiness, and I couldn't appreciate the moments that were just there, and it's nothing is happening. It would be like something is, I have to create some sort of excitement right now, because otherwise I'm not living my best life, or something. Right. Something would nag me. And again, that too took a lot of epiphanies and a lot of discoveries to say, you know what, boredom is just fine sometimes. It's just cool. It's just okay to be bored. It's a very normal response, and a lot of people are bored most of the time, and some people are very boring too. But yeah, that's how it is. And
Hey, stop talking about me.
Your writing is very profound a lot of times, and I completely relate to some of the things you say, and it's like, wow. And I think today one of the answers that I was writing for somebody, Brian, please stop me if I'm going off track or something, because I tend to do that when I get excited. So you can.
No, you're the guest of honor. You can go off track as much as you want.
We have this story in India about this god Shiva, and Shiva wanted to teach people about enlightenment. So he's supposed to, actually, most people think he's a god, but he's actually a yogi who lived on the mountains, and he wanted to teach people enlightenment. And there were 7 sages who went to him, and he said, okay, it will take you 7 years to learn. And his wife came to him, and she said, I want to get enlightened too. So he said, sure. And there's this beautiful discourse between Shiva and his consort Sati, where he takes her on his lap, makes her sit on his lap, and he sings to her, or he teaches her stuff by calling her my beautiful one, my loved one, and all of that. And Sati actually attains enlightenment in 3 days. And the sages take 7 years to master the same thing. And one of the sages asked Shiva that how come she learned it in 3 days, but we have to sit with you for 7 years to learn this? And so Shiva replies saying that's because her level of surrender to me was so absolute that it was easy. There was no barrier with her to, for her to receive any information I gave. But you guys come with such a critical questioning mind. I had to spend a lot of time undoing all of that for then to say something. So
wow, that is amazing because for two reasons. First of all, the 7-year thing, it took me 7 years to recover from borderline personality disorder. But also, what you're talking about when you're talking about surrender is you're talking about authenticity. You're talking about sincerity, your sincerity and approach. And I talk about that all the time. Your length of recovery depends on your sincerity in your approach.
Yep.
Without it, you may never recover.
Yep.
And in fact, my intended audience are people who are already receptive and sincere. So, man, what a great story for you to bring up.
Thank you. I love the story. And, what you talk about authenticity and sincerity, I think that's something I wanted to discuss as well. You were absolutely right in saying that the environment has to also support you. Because I've had people mollycoddling me sometimes with my disorder. I've had it for the longest time, being, for example, when I got divorced and I thought I hit, ground zero and my parents were not supporting me and everything, I would find men easily who's on whose shoulder I could cry on and who would say to me that your husband was a bastard for leaving you and that's okay. And it was very easy to stay in that deluded state. So even today, like if I do something wrong and my husband supports it, the next day I will tell him that you cannot do that. You have to be very firm on your boundaries. If I violate something, you have to tell me that this is not okay. You might be very sweet and doing it, thinking you're doing me a good thing, but you're actually harming me. You're causing me a setback.
A few days ago, I was talking to somebody from Lebanon, and they said that on the crazy scale, if the United States is 1 on the crazy scale, 1 being the minimum, Lebanon is 3 on the crazy scale.
Okay.
But that if I travel to India, because I told this person that I want to go to India, this person said that India is like 8 on the crazy scale. Would you agree with that?
Well, depends how you define crazy, I think. But I'll tell you what, I think the Western world is very left-brained, logical, and straight out rational at all times, most of the times. But Indians are much more, I think right-brained, philosophical, creative. They're very, very accepting of a lot of crazy things in general because they probably had some kind of rooting or grounding for it before. But today it's become stupid. But yeah, so you will see a lot of crazy things. For example, there is this, a thing we do outside our house during festivals. We draw rangoli. We make something with the rice flour and we decorate it outside our houses. And the reason people started doing that in the olden ages were because insects would come inside the house and some of them would mix poison so that the insects would die outside, and you can't just throw it outside the house. It looks dirty. So they would draw, paint attractive things and they would leave it outside. That was one reason. The other was, which my mom told me, is that we would feed everybody, during festival time, cows, birds, everything. And so the insects had to be fed too. So they would draw, rice, flour, stuff outside the house and they, decorate it so that the insects could eat. And today, the people have just followed it so blindly that if they don't have time to draw it outside their houses, and we live in apartment buildings now, you don't need to draw it. There are no insects outside. But if you don't have that, people use stickers to stick it outside their houses, and without realizing where that tradition comes from. So a lot of things has been distorted. I'm very proud of my heritage and I read a lot about Ayurveda and yoga and all of it. And some of it is profound.
Right.
I mean, profound. A lot of people come here to learn meditation and learn spirituality and learn a lot of lessons about life. But it's been distorted in my own country in such ways. And so, yeah, if you see crazy things going on, then yes, that's because it's been distorted. So, but yeah, Indians are overall accepting as well. So yes, it's going to be exciting. You should come here sometime.
I intend to. The person was talking about the craziness scale.
Right.
I think the person was doing it with affection. So
Yes.
As far as like the wow factor for a foreigner, but
That way, yes. I mean, the sheer crowd, the sheer amount of lack of personal space here, that will surprise you. I mean, it's going to blow your mind. It's going to be if you're coming first time from the U.S., yes, you're going to have a culture shock of epic proportions.
The first time I traveled to India, and the only time, was in a book called Shantaram by Gregory David Roberts. Yeah. One of my favorite books of all time, and I mean probably my second favorite book of all time. So Shantaram was written by an Austrian or an Australian, I can't remember which, because in the book he uses both to kind of throw people off. It's based on a true story, loosely on a true story. Mm-hmm. This man who got into heroin addiction and drug dealing after his wife and his child died. To kill his pain, he got into heroin. He escaped from prison twice, and on the second time, he fled to Bombay. And I'm telling you what, man, the way this guy writes about India, this is not a book written by an Indian reflecting the realities of India. No, I love it for the same reason I love Dandelion Wine. It's a poetic perspective toward India, a love letter written toward India, something that he has adopted as something that he loves.
Shantaram is one of my friends. My best friend was reading it when I was in college, and she kept telling me I should read it, and I never got around to reading it. And now that you have talked about it so much, I think reading it from your perspective, if I'm reading the book, I'm going to think about how Brian thought about it and read it. So it's going to be interesting. And ironically, my favorite book is an American book. It's Gone with the Wind.
Oh, really?
Yes.
What do you love about Gone with the Wind?
Everything. I love Scarlett's portrayal. I think I had the most massive crush on Red Butler. I mean, I read it when I was a teen, I think. And I was like, oh my God, Red is awesome. And
he's my uncle, I just saying.
And the whole depiction of the Civil War and everything was just fantastic. It was beautiful. It's very well written. One of my favorites. I think it was on par with Pride and Prejudice when I read it. So yeah, it's
considered a major classic here. What do you think about the racial themes throughout that book?
Interestingly, it wasn't. It didn't strike me as a racist book of some sort. It struck me as something that was factual at that point of time, and the relationship between the owners and slaves was just. From that period of time, it was differently looked at. Today I can look upon it and say, oh my God, that's so wrong. That's the whole thing is wrong. But when you're reading that book, you're in that era and in that reality of what is happening then. People didn't know any better. But the way the relationship was between these people was amazing. Like Scarlett, for example, talks about her mammy, and she talks about how she's like a mother to her. And was beautiful. I think that was the first woman who won an Oscar, right? The African American who won an Oscar.
It's interesting that you bring this up because I'm an avid movie collector, and I buy my movies from Voodoo.com. But I'm always like checking to see what they've got on sale there. And the other day they had Gone with the Wind on sale for like $6.
Wow.
HD. So what I do is every time I'm interested in a movie, I'll go onto IMDb.com and I'll read like all the backstory on how the production, on everything. There were people actually offended by that.
I just have this one thing, right? I think getting offended all the time is very exhausting, firstly. And a lot of people who get offended aren't really doing anything about it. So it's really,
well, hey, listen, sister, you're talking to the choir. It's ridiculous. I think it's reached a ridiculous pitch, and I can barely stand to get on Twitter anymore because that's all it is. Just people complaining and offended.
Yeah, I know.
It all ties into, we're bringing this back around to borderline personality disorder.
Yes.
The law of individual inherent rights, responsibility, and authority. Everybody else is the weather to you.
Exactly.
So don't worry about them. Worry about yourself. Look inward.
Yes, absolutely. I wanted to get back to that, the one thing that I spoke about guys offering a shoulder, because I thought I should say something. The interesting thing was the reason, that's not as glamorous as it sounds, is because the shoulder is only there for a while. It's only there till that person knows that you if at least it used to be in the past, where I would expect them to completely take care of me. And this was the way of charming people. I think most of the men I used to be dating at that point of time used to get very charmed and used to get into a relationship space with me. And then I would always think that they abandoned me because they would leave. And I used to play this victim role in my head where I was this poor girl who was being abandoned by men. And that was really stupid because I realized it was happening so many times to me in my early teens to 20s that I realized that this is something not about other people, but it was about me. And I had this boss who I worked for in a company, and I was crying about this one guy. And he tells me that, is the remote control of your life in his hands? And I was like, what is that supposed to mean? And he's like, your remote doesn't seem to be with you. You're the only person who can make yourself feel anything at all. But he has the remote control. He switches it on and you cry. And that was also some sort of learning because it stuck with me. And I have grown over that feeling. And so when you talk about there being no such thing as abandonment, I understand that because you're an adult. The very idea that somebody can abandon you is laughable right now. But I know where that comes from. It comes from that child part of you that is probably has a lot of these distorted beliefs about the world. And
that's not just a child thing. That's an adult thing too in today's world because of the way that music and movies and stuff like that present the idea of relationships.
Right.
That, Jerry Maguire, that very famous movie with Tom Cruise, what is the famous line out of that? You complete me. Well,
it's bullshit.
That is bullshit. If you're in the mindset that you need somebody else to make you whole, it's the very opposite of emotional health.
A lot of people don't understand what genuine love or empathy is. They believe that they understand it, but they don't. And I think the biggest culprit in my life, personally in my life, the biggest culprit in making me think in distorted ways even when I grew up was the media, the movies and the books that I've read. I thought I was entitled to this love version of whatever Disney was selling or books were selling, and when I would not get that, I kept blaming everything on the outside and saying, this is so wrong. This is not how it happens. And I remember my ex-husband asked me this question. He said, do you even understand what marriage is? Or are you just, hoping for a romantic fairy tale every day? And at that point, it didn't make sense. But much later, I felt, oh, my God, the poor guy, I put him through so much because, I don't think I understood what love is. I don't think I had any idea or any clue about it. And all I was wanting was, excitement and living some distorted version of what media tells you. So,
sure.
I think people should go on a media cleanse of those kind of movies. For a long time, I stopped watching romantic comedies. I stopped reading anything that had stuff like that to just think about, and really look at real life people and talk to real life people and understand what they mean by love, what they mean by marriage. This was one whole year. I've actually done a lot of interviews with a lot of my friends and asking them about how they make marriage. What is it, and trying to understand it for myself.
A group of people that I look up to myself are old people. I love old people who are successful. And I'm not talking about, having millions of dollars or anything like that. I'm talking about being successful at life. Mm-hmm. And if you can take a walk with somebody like that, you'll learn more in an hour-long walk than you will from 1,000 books.
Absolutely.
I love poetry, but I would say probably 98% of poetry reflects distorted thinking.
Yeah. I have a question with respect to this for you, Brian. And so, as BPD grows, you have a lot of distorted thinking, which of course comes from the, two core distorted thinkings, but you have a lot of distorted ideas. And sometimes when your distorted thinking starts to crumble or break, for example, it can be painful. I have experienced that because the first time, for example, I started understanding that love is probably not what I thought it was. It was very, very painful. And I rebelled against that idea. So I think I read this in Scott Peck once. Scott Peck has this beautiful definition for love. He says, two people are not in love when they cannot live without each other. But two people who are completely okay to live without each other and they're completely happy being without each other, yet choose to be in each other's company, are people in love. Because that's not attachment based, that's not need based. It's based on genuine, well-being, affection for each other.
I could not have said it better myself.
Yeah. So in the road dress travel, right? So when I read that initially, and I thought, what the fuck? This is it made me uncomfortable because I was in this path where I was unraveling a lot of things. So I threw that book aside and I said, this is not it. And I still clung on to my distorted notions. And sometimes I still do. I think I'm in that phase where you describe in your stages where you're ruminating and meditating and letting going of, a lot of distorted thinking. I think I'm on that stage. But yeah, so it's painful sometimes. It's really painful to think that something you've understood about the world is so miserably wrong. It puts you in the state of, oh my God, and I don't know what to do. Sometimes I rebel against it. Sometimes I try to ignore it. But then it keeps coming back in my head because once you've learned the truth about something, it doesn't
you
stop
can't go
until
back.
you can't go back, right? And it takes hold in your head like crazy. And you realize, oh, fuck, now there's no escaping it. But over the years, slowly, that truth becomes digestible. It becomes easier. And today, when I watch romantic comedies, I sound a little bit cynical. I say, oh, this is bullshit. And my friend is like, what the fuck has happened to you? And I'm like, so my question is, did that happen to you? And like, how did you cope with it? Like, because.
All right. So I was, I say that it took me 7 years to recover. The first 2 years were total garbage. They were total lost because I was seeing somebody who wasn't helping me and not giving me answers. Mm-hmm. For the last 5 years, I was in the deepest depression of my life. And it wasn't because of chemical reasons. Mm-hmm. It was because of what you just said.
Oh,
the realization that everything that I thought that I knew for a certainty was false. Mm-hmm. And that it had caused so much damage in my life that was preventable. That was preventable. I was just having a conversation with somebody the other day about my dad. Mm-hmm. When I came to accept the true nature of what my dad had done to me, mm-hmm. I love my dad. I admire him for so many reasons. I get so many people beating me up about my stance on my father. It's not a decision that I made lightly to not have any contact with my father, and it's not something, contrary to what the critics will say, that I've put in place because I'm angry at him. Yeah. It's something I've put in place because I love him, and it's the only tool I have to help him maybe come to his senses and start looking inward. But just looking at that relationship with my father and realizing truly the gravity of what he had done to me as a 5-6-year-old, 7-year-old, the weight of abuse that poor boy endured, and coming to accept that is just what it was, whether I like it or not. Mm-hmm. And then digesting that, that took 5 years. And there are still times when I'll get a thought of my father, some pleasant memory or something of my father. Mm-hmm. And what is my inclination in that moment of weakness is to reach out to him or something. But then I have to sit down with myself, remind myself of what my priority is. What is my priority? My priority is staying emotionally healthy. Never again returning to that cesspool of emotional distorted thinking, of emotional unhealth and distorted thinking. Mm-hmm. And then I think, if I love my father, what do I have to do with him? Sometimes love, mm-hmm. sometimes just the nature of love, of genuine love, takes your choice out of the equation.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Sometimes genuine love says you have to do something this way. Mm-hmm. You no longer have a choice. You can choose to do it anyway, as long as you're willing to be emotionally unhealthy and you're willing to support other people's emotional unhealth. But if your priority is the genuine well-being of yourself and of other people, sometimes genuine love says this is the only option you have, and you got to do it. the depression was really heavy. But as I was telling this other person the other day that I was talking to, it was not the kind of depression that is hopeless.
Correct. Yeah.
It was the kind of depression that was digesting realities that I did not like.
Yeah. Sort of makes you feel like a grown-up.
As profound as the depression was, I knew I was on the right track at the same time, and so I had hope.
Yes.
I had hope that on the other side of this, things will be much better. And here I am. So
That's
stayed
and
the course.
It's very interesting because I have this thought when you said this, because you said you had your reaction to learning about truth was probably different from my initial reaction to learning truth, right? So you went through depression. You didn't try to rebel or fight against it.
Well, I did. I mean, that's what depression is. I mean, kind of, when this intense, no, this cannot be true.
Correct.
Because I don't want it to be true. Well, if you catch yourself saying at any time, this is your inner dialogue I'm talking about.
Huh?
If at any time you catch your inner dialogue saying, no, this can't be true because I don't want it to be true, well, then it's probably true.
Yeah.
And you're
exactly.
That's denial. That's denial in play.
Exactly. And it requires a lot of guts to, step up that, increase that volume of your inner voice and listen to it more than what you're listening to the distorted. And surprisingly, I never had that inner voice very strongly at my start, but today it blares inside me. I still do, I still want to indulge in stupid fantasies sometimes, which I know will lead me to a path of pain. And that voice inside me tells me, but it's important to be aware, as long as, so if you can watch a rom-com and sigh all you want and say, oh, it's only problematic when you start expecting your life to reflect it and demand that your life should reflect everything that you want. I don't know about you, but I had a huge sense of entitlement, and growing up, I think this was fueled by my parents, because I remember this when I was a child and I would cry. My parents would immediately want to shut me up, and my dad would buy, toys for me, no matter how badly I behaved. And he would just stuff me with toys. So, and I think he thought he was doing a good thing, but he actually spoiled me in the process. And for me, I was in Europe with my current husband. We were, before we got married, we took a trip. And I remember, walking somewhere, and it was really hot, and I kept complaining about it. And he made this remark. He said, I noticed something, and he said it not accurately, but he just said it, as a matter of fact. He said, I noticed something about you. You are so not okay with discomfort of the slightest sort. And and I said, what do you mean? And he's like, I'm feeling all of the things you're feeling too, but I wouldn't state it. And I said, why not? He said, because I don't foul the environment by bringing that up, because, it spoiled the day for everybody else. And, you have to bear it sometimes in life. And that struck me really hard, because I realized I was somebody who was not okay with disappointment at all. I felt it was a bad thing that was happening to me. It's terrible because, I had never been allowed to face disappointment as a child. And in a way, that is abuse too. I know it doesn't sound like abuse because your parents are spoiling you, but
it's neglect.
It is neglect. It's not teaching me things, not preparing me, in some way,
right.
For life. Of course, I have sympathy for them now because I know why they did that. They were very deprived in their childhood. They came from a small town village, so they wanted me to have the best of everything. So I think overcompensation.
They were compensating.
Yes. So, but this really taught me, and I realized at that point of time how entitled I was about a lot of things, and how I demanded things should go my way, and I would throw a fit if I didn't get it, if I didn't get what I wanted. And I realized that that's something that I have to, that was such a profound epiphany for me. And and ever since, I've not completely overcome it. There are some times I'm on the verge of throwing tantrums even today when I want it my way. But a voice inside me grows louder and says, okay, this is not right. And I want my husband, to reinforce that. So I keep telling him, you have to tell me that that's not okay. You have to tell me, because if I do something wrong, and he's like, he sometimes indulges me, I get scared. I'm actually terrified that he shouldn't indulge me, because I don't want that anymore.
Well, he sounds like good people. He sounds like good people. I've never talked to you about your husband. I've seen pictures of him, but he sounds to me like a good one.
he is the best. So the reason I brought up that depression point is because, I feel that if somebody possibly reads the stages that you talk about, and they also expect to feel, they also expect to have depression as the final stage, that would be wrong, right? Because it might respond differently in different people. People might have a different way of coping with stuff.
Yeah, I mean, the whole reason is because in order for a person to obtain a comprehensive, full understanding of the whole disorder, to put the puzzle together all, so that every single aspect of it makes sense to them and does not conflict with any other puzzle piece, your path there is going to be different than mine because my circumstances were different than yours.
Yes.
So yeah, I totally agree with that. Like I said, that this 1, 2, 3, do this, that sells a lot of books, but I'm not interested in selling you books. I'm interested in helping people get there. I've tried to explain it. Maybe it's probably a fault, some kind of fault in my explanation or whatever, but there is no 1, 2, 3. I want people to understand that accurate education and insight, that's the cure. However you get there,
yes,
that's the cure.
Yes.
You may take a different direction than I did. Like, for example, a couple weeks ago, I was talking to a lady, and she asked me when my hit and rock bottom event was.
Yeah.
Was it before or after I went to Arizona? So remember, I went to Arizona, and I met a guy who gave me some profound insights that changed my life.
Yeah. Yes. You've mentioned that.
It wasn't until maybe 6 months after that I had my hitting rock bottom event. So I had my profound epiphanies.
Yeah.
Which, led me to recovery. But would I have recovered without my hitting rock bottom event? No. So a lot of people, it happens the other way. For a lot of people, they have their hitting rock bottom event.
Yeah.
Which then later they have their epiphanies that lead to their recovery eventually. You see what I'm saying? So in the order that it happened for me is not necessarily the normal order for most people, I would say.
Yes. And sometimes, I want to say this because with rock bottom is because I had a divorce and I had to quit my job because I was in a very, very bad state in 2012, 2013. And I thought that was rock bottom. And I thought at that point that life couldn't get worse. But I did stupid things even after that. I got into, relationships in a hurry just to make myself feel better. Just because the first guy who gave me comfort, the first guy who gave me a shoulder, I would get into it. In fact, I think at some point I got into a relationship with a woman, although I'm not even bisexual, because she liked me and she wanted me. So I entertained, I confused myself and I thought, oh my God, maybe I should get bisexual somehow. I should get it. Yeah. And I realized that was rock bottom for me. I lost both of these people who were really good friends, who became really good friends, but it turned romantic because of our dynamic or whatever. And I lost that guy forever. He was, one guy forever. And then I lost his friend forever. And that was hitting rock bottom, not once, but multiple times in the process.
Well, do you mind if I throw something in here? Just for people listening, I would kindly like to make a correction that there aren't like multiple hitting rock bottom events. I think what you're talking about is that, what you assumed to be rock bottom was not really your rock bottom.
Yes, exactly. Sorry. That's
okay.
What I meant. Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So I just want to clarify that for people. You when you hit rock bottom, that you can't go any further down. But in the lead up to that, there may be a lot of false rock bottoms where you're like, oh, okay, I can't take any more of this. Well, you may find that your pain tolerance is much deeper than you ever thought.
Yes, perfect. That is perfect. Actually, what you're describing is exactly what I wanted to say. It's that, the life events seem like a rock bottom sometimes, that you lose your job, you're getting a divorce and everything is going wrong. And technically it looks like a rock bottom, but maybe it's not yet rock bottom for you until you feel, oh my God, this is wrong. This is hell. This is something. And I think it's characterized by this one thing which says, right now, I have no way left but to, understand what is going on with me, accept that something is wrong and fight it. That acceptance, I think that is very, very crucial.
I would say that the dead giveaway for a false rock bottom is when you still kind of have hope that you're going to save a relationship or something by working on yourself. You're either doing it entirely for yourself or it's not going to happen. Another thing I'd like to say is that just because you're kind of like kind of lighthearted relationships and stuff like that does not mean, that you're backsliding. First of all, I don't like the term backsliding because I don't think it's a real thing. Can't know less now than you knew yesterday. When I was recovering, I knew that I was moving forward. I knew that I was moving in the right direction. So, I had a lot of, fun in my apartment, in my bachelor apartment. I had a lot of girls come over. I was very active with them, let's put it that way. But, I made it clear to them that I had a borderline personality disorder and that my priority was recovering and that I wasn't going to get into any committed relationships. So they knew this when they come over. It wasn't like I was teasing them into thinking that they were going to get into I was going to be their boyfriend or anything like that. So just pleasant distraction is not necessarily a bad thing as long as you are certain that you're moving in the right direction. Because there's a period where you're just making mental connections. You're just trying to kind of put the puzzle together in your head.
The way you described mental distraction, that very thing actually shows in some way, ironically, that you're healthy. Because when I was in an unhealthy place and I went on, to date people, all I wanted was attachment. I wasn't, looking for conversation or fun or friendship or anything. So the very fact that somebody can stay casual in a realistic sense without, hurting another person or demanding something from them, I think that's very healthy to do. It might not be for everybody. No, not everybody would want a casual relationship.
No, it certainly wouldn't be for everybody. And I would say probably it probably would not be for more women than for men, because
definitely not. Definitely.
And especially if that's your bent, if you're bent on that kind of possession of being possessed or possessing somebody else, you probably want to avoid it altogether, to be honest.
Yeah. And so most of my bad relationships, and I call them bad with no disrespect, all of those people are still really, really important. They taught me a lot, but I call it bad just for the simplicity of the term. All of them started with huge, very high levels of intensity, extreme levels of intensity. They would start with, oh my God, I need you and I need you. And they don't last as far as I know. They are not relationships that, they're movie relationships. They might not last. Relationships that really last, in my opinion, and I could be wrong, is where you've taken time to really get to know each other, where you've really seen the other person for what they are. You've seen their pluses and their flaws, and that person is not perfect, and you're not, hoping to be consumed by them, or, and, when you started this conversation, you asked me about the romance in my marriage, and, I've seen, we've seen 3 years we've seen all of it. We've seen realism. We've seen, we've known each other really, really well, and it started really slowly. We were good friends, and that's what we were for a whole year. And I've never felt that any relationship was as stable as this one. And that could be because of my recovery to such a degree as well. But I believe anything that starts with full passion and full of, I can't live without you, those relationships don't last for a really long time. Or at least they give you a lot of pain if they do. So.
Yeah, I think those kind of relationships tend to be born in infatuation.
Yes.
And kind of sexual desire, which is not a bad thing. I think it's kind of a spice of life.
Correct.
If you're in a position for it, it's thrilling. There are few things in life.
And your ex-wife sounds like, oh my God, such a mature person. Diana, right? Her name is?
Yeah, Diana.
Oh, wow. I had tears when I was reading the letters that you shared, that she's written to you. I completely had tears. I think she seems like a beautiful person. And thank you for sharing so many details. It can't be easy, but thank you so much.
Well, I do it out of respect for her, because I could not empathize with what she was going through then, and now I can. And she demonstrated a tremendous, I mean, just an unbelievable level of love for me, of genuine love.
Yeah.
That I never got to thank her for. Will she ever hear these programs? Will she ever hear my name and hear about this work I'm doing? I don't know.
I'm pretty sure she will.
Well, I don't know. Because, if you're a happy person, she's remarried now.
Yeah.
She's been married now to this guy for almost as long as we were married.
Wow.
So, I'm kind of a forgotten thing in the past, but she probably doesn't even care, to be honest with you. I mean, she's probably done her stuff, and
I don't think you
life
ever
is
stop
good.
care. I don't think you ever stop caring about people you loved, right? Like, I mean, you might not be attached to them and you want nothing from them, but you don't stop caring about them. So
No, and that's what genuine love is. Like I've said, it's still there afterwards. So I'm sure that she loves me as a part of her past. But yeah,
yeah,
but no, what she did was, it did take courage, and it took an unbelievable amount of insight.
yeah, wow, yeah.
The most amazing thing to me about it is that if you're ever in a stressful situation,
Yeah.
let's say you're in a war zone, like in a Nazi concentration camp, and you're trying to imagine what you need to do now that will be the best thing for your life in 5 years.
Yeah.
In that situation, it's almost impossible. Like, how can you think clearly about what you're going to need in 5 years when things are so bad right now?
Yeah.
But that's what she did.
Yeah.
With everything that was happening, she was able to look ahead like 5 years into the future and say,
Yeah.
this, and this is what I have to do today.
Yeah.
To me, that is like other level stuff there, in my opinion. So I was very fortunate.
She was your gift from the universe, possibly, for you to come to the stage.
Well, she is the gift from the universe for everybody that is ever influenced by her, even through me, for example.
I love hearing you talk about her because you speak about her with so much love and respect. That's amazing. It's beautiful. That's there's one last thing I actually wanted to talk about and bring about in this conversation, and this is probably related in somewhat to what you said. So when sometimes when I used to think about why do I have this problem, why did I have to go through all of this, and when I have no answers, and I have to just say, okay, life is just like a deck of cards, you have to play with what you get, and it hurts sometimes, it hurts to make you feel like, okay, you're in this position, and you cry and you weep, but there's I don't know whether there is inherent purpose in life. I don't know about too much about religion and God, but I've always believed that my prayers and having faith has helped. I don't know if you had this in your experience, but a lot of times when I have cried and I have prayed and I've sat down and I said, I need help. I would just sit down and I would go down on my knees, and I didn't know who I was talking to, but I would say, I need help. I need clarity. Please help me. I really, really am suffering and I need help. My intention is to be the best. And my intention is to not hurt anybody. Please tell me what to do. And I would, miraculously get insights of some sort. I had help from somebody, or I had somebody walk into my life who would suggest something, and it was beautiful. So I've still not stopped this element of faith that I have. I don't know whether there is a supernatural power, and I don't think I'm qualified to discuss this. But I think it's an important part of my recovery is, focusing on faith, meditation, prayer, and just asking for guidance whenever possible. And that's helped me a lot, actually, in getting better.
There are two things I can say about that. Well, there's a lot I could say about that. I'm going to constrain it to two things. One thing is that even atheist doctors and scientists admit that that prayer has real benefits.
Yes, absolutely. Mm-hmm.
The second thing I'll say about this is that when I went into recovery, I was already a God-fearing person.
Right.
I already had a solid foundation of what I think God expects of me and expects of everybody, and of who He is as a person.
Mm-hmm.
So when I went into therapy, one real problem I had was this fact that, well, wait a second. If prayer works for everybody, even people who aren't living the way God wants them to live, is it just some kind of psychological placebo? Going into it, I was certain, concretely certain about my belief in God, that He is a reality, just like gravity is a reality and everything else is a reality.
Yeah.
But wait a second, if other people are benefiting from prayer who are not living the way that He accepts and all this stuff, is prayer just a placebo?
Yeah.
And if prayer is just a placebo, is God just a placebo? Is belief in God just a placebo? Well, without going into too much detail, my conclusion is that God is real. He wants everybody to have a relationship with Him. Well, what is needed for that? What is needed for that is clear, accurate thinking. So anybody trying to recover from any kind of substance abuse or emotional disorder or anything like that who prays to God, no matter what they're doing in their lives, no matter who they are, no matter what their background is, when they pray to God and they say, I want help being better from this disorder or whatever, that falls within His will. That harmonizes with what His will for us is, that we be healthy so that possibly at some future date we can have a really tight relationship with Him. We've really covered a lot of ground, haven't we?
Yeah. And I feel like I was talking to somebody who I could understand so well and who I could relate to so well. So thank you so much, Brian. I think I am extremely privileged to have discovered you. And I'm not saying this just because it's the end of the podcast. I wanted to say it all this while. I think it was a lucky day that I discovered you, because you thank you so much. You're doing so much good. You're enriching so many people's lives, and I respect that, and I love that I'm a part of this group.
Man, I'm just you're the standard.
Oh
You're
my
the
God,
standard
thank you, Brian. Thank you so much.
That I go from.
Oh my God, I'll cry if you say more.
Oh, well, in that case, your eyes are like the ocean.
Okay.